Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Astro Priestesses Summit of 2025 and beyond. And I am so excited to invite visionary astrologer Emily Trinkaus here into our roundtable. And she's going to be sharing on the lunar node shift with the North Node moving into Pisces. And I love the title that you came up with. I'm like very Pisces, just realizing I'm like, I don't have it like in front of me right here, right now. But here it is, the North Node in Pisces. Navigate transitional tumult with compassion, imagination, and higher vision. I love this. I feel like almost in one sentence, like you captured such a brilliant theme for the following year. So I'm so honored that you're here. You're one of my favorite astrologers, one of the astrologers, like really one of the few astrologers who I like when I see you offer things, I sign up, I take your courses, I tune into your webinars. Like I just receive so much from your brilliance. And so for anyone who's new to you, Emily, I want to take a moment just to read your bio here so they can learn a little bit about you. Okay, just pulling it up here. All right. So Emily Trinkaus fell in love with astrology at age 13 and has been a passionate student of the cosmic science ever since. She has practiced professionally since 1999 and offers online classes, personal readings, live retreats, as well as mentorship programs for aspiring astrologers. Emily's gift is to translate the complex language of astrology into accessible, practical, and inspiring wisdom you can use for growth, healing, and success. She also has a background in energy medicine, writing, and art, and loves to support other artists in expressing their full potential. For every new and full moon, Emily records an in-depth audio transmission revealing how you can co-create with the planetary energies. She also hosts the Embodied Aquarian Age podcast, featuring conversations with astrologers, healers, and other visionaries to support our awakening as organic, embodied humans through this time of transition. Find out about Emily's readings and classes at embodiedaquarian.com and Emily's newsletters and podcast at embodiedaquarian.substack.com. So welcome, Emily. I'm just so excited that you're here.
Thank you.
And as you're sharing your bio, I'm just like, yes, like especially how to support people to stay as embodied, organic human beings in this incredible time of transition. So welcome. And I would just love to start off and ask, what are some main themes you see of the astrology over 2025? Of course, you're here to speak about the lunar node shift, but if there's anything else that you want to weave in about the astrology or anything that's inspiring you for the upcoming year, we'd love to hear your input.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm just so honored to be here with you. And in this summit, the Priestess Roundtable is phenomenal. Um, and for the next year, it's a stunning year astrologically. It's pretty mind-blowing, and I'm very happy that you're having each astrologer talk about, bring it down to one thing because it's a little like holy shamoly, how can I blah. So that was part of the inspiration for my title of this interview, to really name that next year is very tumultuous in terms of major transitions. And this is because all the slow moving planets, which are collective forces and have a lot to do with our bigger human story, though of course we feel them personally as well, they're all changing signs. Or Pluto just changed signs, and the other three slow moving planets are changing signs, but then they're going back into the previous signs. So 2026 is when a lot of energies kind of settle in for the long term. But next year is the big transition period. And there's something, as a mostly mutable person myself, there's something very exciting to me about this time of profound change. And then why I was excited to talk about the North Node is because that really points to the how can we best navigate this time for our highest good, for humanity's highest good? What can we really lean into for our evolutionary, the process for our highest evolution? So yeah, that's and very unexpected, wild changes as well. I think we're coming into a time that's beyond what we can imagine. And so really good. I'm so glad you're doing this summit. And I know, so many astrologers are going to bring so much wisdom and support for how do we meet this incredible transition we're coming into that I think is really going to blow our minds and shatter our ideas about reality and about humanity and where we are and who we are. I think, and as a Gemini rising, I like my mind being blown. I'm very curious to see what we're coming into.
I love that. And as you're sharing about all the, collective outer planets that are like moving back and forth between signs in 2025, as I'm sitting here, it's like I just tuning into what my body feels. I feel like this I was like, whoa, I feel like this very swirling energy that almost, I feel like moving almost like up and out, like this very, and maybe it's because those outer planets are moving from the earth, water signs, into the air fire, which is energetically this up and out energy. And I just was kind of tuning into that. And then like bringing the Pisces energy, the Pisces North Node, I'm just energetically, it feels like, wow, that is the medicine on how to navigate all of this wild change that we're in, which I know is why part of you are inspired to dive into this topic. And so I'd love to just kind of open it up to for you to share anything that you want to dive into here on this North Node shift into Pisces, and maybe just to kind of start. And this might be already like woven into what you're wanting to share, but for anyone who's a little bit newer to astrology, if you want to just kind of ground them in on the general, like what the lunar nodes are and the kind of their movement through the sky, or like kind of the how they move through the zodiac.
I'm actually going to start with that,
Okay,
with my
beautiful. I love
presentation. So
that.
I'm going to go ahead and bring up my presentation.
Perfect.
And I would love, Jamie, if I mean, I know you're an expert in the Pisces North Node because you were born with it. And so I would love, any comments and certainly any questions, please chime in.
Beautiful. I
Um,
will.
Okay, so yeah, let's start with what are the nodes? And the nodes are points in space. They're not actual entities like the planets, but they are as powerful as the planets. And here's a visual. So the nodes are basically where the moon's orbit crosses the sun's apparent path. Oops, back. Apparent path. Oops, back. Okay, careful when I touch here. Where the moon's orbit crosses the sun's apparent path around the Earth, which is also called the ecliptic. And node actually means knot, Knot. And I love this quote from Judith Hill. She has a really wonderful book on the nodes. She says the nodal knots can be seen as 2 points where our souls are tied and knotted into the wheel of life, our earthly incarnations. So this idea of, the soul's journey, which we live in a very embodied here on earth kind of way. So with the nodes, they are always exactly opposite. So they activate a sign polarity. So we're going to be talking a lot about the North Node in Pisces, which is opposite the sign Virgo. And so to me, navigating this time of the North Node in Pisces is very much about how we work with, how we integrate, how we balance that Virgo-Pisces polarity. We're going to get into it. The nodes travel retrograde. So the North Node was in Aries and then coming into Pisces. And if you know astrology, wait, Aries is the first sign, Pisces is the last sign. What? So the nodes travel backwards through the zodiac. which is unusual. They're generally retrograde. And the nodal cycle is about 19 years, meaning it takes about 19 years for the nodes to return to the same signs. And so every 19 years, approximately, you get what's called a nodal return. You get a kind of reset around your soul's intention, your soul's purpose, a time when you can really harness your North Node energies. We'll talk about it. And also, I'll just mention that the eclipse cycle correlates to the nodal cycle. So eclipses always occur near the nodes. So we're also in a time where we're going to see several eclipses in the signs Pisces and Virgo. Again, another way, another sign that we're really wrestling with, working with this polarity over the next year and a half or so. Okay. So we've got the North Node and the South Node. And the North Node is considered your leading edge of evolution. And traditionally, and this gets into Vedic astrology, which has a kind of different interpretation of the nodes, and I'm solidly Western. I respect Vedic astrology. I come from the Western tradition, and I have to say that my love of the nodes and my reliance on the nodes in terms of reading individual charts and reading for the collective was very much inspired by Jan Spiller, the late great astrologer Jan Spiller, who I had the incredible honor to work with and work for several years. And her book, Astrology for the Soul, is my node Bible. and life-changing book. Okay. So the North Node, the old idea is that this is the dragon's head, known as Rahu in Vedic astrology. And the gist is this is where forms enter. So if you think about the head, the mouth, stuff coming in, and it's a place of increase and strength. And the general way I read the North Node is that these are qualities to embrace and to lead with for growth, for success, for fulfillment. So in your personal birth chart, the sign of your North Node tends to be an energy that feels new on a soul level. It feels kind of risky. It's like, oh, that's hard. That's not me. That's weird. But when we go in that direction, that's when everything flows and we have the greatest fulfillment. So it does feel like a risk. It's a risk to go in the direction of the North Node in order to evolve. And I do want to say that there can be an overdoing of that energy sometimes as well. And so important to know we don't want to, it's possible to go into a distorted expression of Pisces with the Pisces North Node. I will talk about that. Okay, and then the South Node, this is representing the karmic past where we're coming from as a soul. So traditionally, this is the dragon's tail or Ketu. So a place of loss and weakness. And I like in the South Node symbol that it kind of looks like a drain. So it's where we can get stuck, where energy, like, especially with the nodes in our chart, this is where we can kind of keep doing the same thing, thinking we're going to get different results. We get stuck in the South Node and it feels like a drain. So loss and weakness. So the South Node is typically representing qualities to release in order to evolve. And this is also where the shadow or distortion or unconscious expression of a sign is very likely to show up. So we're going to be working with some shadow Virgo tendencies over the next year and a half. I will talk about that. And at the same time, we don't want to throw away the South Node because there are also gifts and skills from the past that you can use as a foundation for growth. So it's not about getting rid of the North Node. It's about who's leading, who's in charge, what are we prioritizing, and using the South Node as a place to support the North Node. And I love thinking about, I don't want to pick on you, Jamie, but I love the North Node in Pisces and South Node in Virgo for astrology, right? Because I think the Pisces North Node is helping people see the bigger picture and the higher vision and imagining this great dream for what's possible in people's lives. But if you got their birth date wrong, right? If you don't have the Virgo, you're not it's not going to work. You have to have the details. You have to if you're telling someone about their Pluto transit and you're like 3 years off, that's not helpful. Right. So like there are a lot of details in astrology that we need, and there are skills and techniques that ground us and that are necessary. But then we use that, we don't get overly in the weeds and we're sort of lost in the details, but we use those details and those techniques and those skills as a ground to then go into the higher vision and imagination and what's possible.
Totally. And it reminds me too, because I've done trainings in so many different forms of healing arts, from energy work to sound healing, and so many different traditions. And the teachers will say this, like, first, you learn the technique and you get skilled and proficient in the technique, which is the very Virgo. And then at some point, you lose the technique. And then you go into the Pisces, and it's when I really like contemplated on that, because I feel like that's such a metaphor for my life, being born with Virgo South Node, Pisces North Node. It's not that you lose the technique, it's that the technique becomes so like intuitive that you're working with it very intuitively and like a very flow type state. So, which also always makes me think of, because I've been in deep contemplation about like how do we end up integrating the nodes? Because often on my journey, I'm naturally very, very Virgo, like being a Virgo South Node, want to plan, prep, get 10 steps ahead of anything, foresee any problem, and go ahead and get on top of that so it doesn't happen, and of course, like that never works out. Um, but then I've also like leaned way too into the Pisces North Node as well, which is like, oh, I'm just not gonna prep and I'm not gonna plan and I'm not gonna do my check out all the details and things. And then it's like the integration. It's like how to have that Virgo detail move into that Pisces flow state. Yeah, that's just something that I was thinking of as you were sharing.
Yeah, really, really well said. And yeah, it's almost like we have to learn the rules before we can really break the rules. I hear that said about, like writing poetry, for example, or painting. Um, and it makes me think about when I first started practicing astrology, and I would spend hours prepping for a reading. I had all my books out and I'm taking all these notes. And then once I went into the reading, I would completely let it go. But it was like the preparation gave me, I think, the confidence to be able to show up and trust. But I needed that, even if I wasn't using what I prepared, I needed that preparation time. I needed to know I had the Virgo solid. And then I could trust and let go. And what I always set an intention and turn it over and for the highest good, do my Pisces due diligence. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I want to mention too, and I'm going to bring him in later, but Dane Rudhyar, one of the most phenomenal astrologers of the 20th century, was born with a North Node in Pisces, which I think is perfect.
Wow, I did not know that. And it's so funny because I did the same thing when in my like the first few years of doing astrology readings. And then at some point it's like that idea that like I have to prep so much started to get in the way of the readings. And then there was this like shift into just trusting. Like then I started moving into, okay, and I'm always going to set aside an hour before the astrology reading to tune into the chart. And I'm just going to trust that whatever comes into my awareness about the chart and that hour right before is going to be what I need to know to support that person and the reading. But there was like a shifting point where it was like I was trying to hang on to the old thing of like at one point it started to feel like, oh, this is like torture to feel like I have to spend 5 hours to like prep for a reading. And so it was like that, can I learn to let go and trust in that like process in between?
Right, right. It is such a process. And I think we need that Piscean approach to astrology. We need the intuition, we need our hearts, we need to be tuning in at that symbolic level. I noticed that certain animals or sort of signs and symbols happenings will happen leading up to a reading that are telling me something, right? They come in a nonlinear way. Because I think when we're overly attached to the Virgo, and this is a, South Node tip for the next year and a half, like that's where we can get rigid or like approach astrology too mechanically, like get all caught up in the sort of mind analysis, and then we miss like the soul level, which I think is the greatest gift for astrology, right? To connect us with our deep selves and deep souls and show us how we are at one with the whole cosmos, which is crazy, but it works.
Oh, I
Crazy
love that.
Pisces, but it works. Okay. So let's get into it with our North Node in Pisces from January 11th, 2025 to July 26th, 2026. So leading with compassion, imagination. Why can't I read the top of my screen? What did I say? Acceptance. Yes, acceptance. And I say the true North Node in Pisces just because there are two ways to calculate the nodes. There's true node and mean node. So if you come across another astrologer who's giving slightly different dates for the North Node in Pisces, they are using the mean node. It's just, astrology, there has to be like many ways to do everything. So just to clarify, true node. Okay, so Pisces, this is mutable water. So just, we can feel into that, just like Jamie was feeling into the swirl of this air and fire emphasis next year. Oh, it feels up and out and all over the place. Whoa. But mutable water, this is very much about being in the flow, right? Flowing with change, flowing with the tumult, finding the way to be with. And I want to say there's an emphasis on being with the water element. It's more about being than doing. It's more about the process than the content or the product. Pisces is traditionally ruled by Jupiter, and I am someone who works with traditional rulers, but I certainly see the association with Neptune, the modern ruler of Pisces. We're going to talk about Neptune. Some of the Pisces archetypes are the dreamer, mystic, visionary, artist, poet, musician, psychic, healer. So these are all energies to lean into. We all have a Pisces part of ourselves, right? I personally don't have any planets in Pisces in my birth chart, but I have 4 planets in Virgo, so I naturally gravitate to the opposite to balance it out. But we all have every sign within us. And so we all have a dreamer, we all have a mystic, right? And this is a time to activate and really tap into those archetypes within ourselves. And with every sign, there's a constructive expression and a shadow expression. So here are some of the constructive Pisces qualities: intuition, compassion, higher vision, service, imagination. Some of the shadows, which, and something I didn't mention here, but overwhelm is part of it. And we see how if Pisces heightens our sensitivity, well, that can also be overwhelming. I mean, I think of Pisces as a highly sensitive sign. People with a lot of Pisces in their birth charts tend to fall into that category of highly sensitive, which is it has superpowers and also can be really challenging in this harsh world, right? So if we're picking up on all the energies, oh my God, it's so overwhelming. And then my energy gets all scattered. I might get depressed. I might want to drink it away or fall into some addiction or escapism, right? So we're going to be tested around how do we, I don't want to say, well, maybe manage. I was going to say manage sensitivity, but it's not about defending or putting up boundaries so I don't feel, but it's about how do I work with strong feelings? How do I work with picking up on collective energies? How do I work with this sensitivity? And how can we be really conscious when it comes to using our imagination and working at the level of consciousness? And I think Pisces is such a tricky energy because we're in a hyper materialist culture. so we're in a culture that tells us energy is bullshit, right? What do you mean you're seeing auras? That's nonsense. Stop it. Right? I mean, I have a friend who literally, when she was a little girl, she'd say, Mommy, why do I see green around this person? You don't. Stop that. Right? So we could, the psychic is denied. And so when it comes up and wait, is this real or am I making this up? And if I'm making it up, isn't it also real on some level? That's the imagination, right? So I feel like we don't have a lot of training in terms of how to work with Pisces. And so, for me anyway, that's been something I've had to really learn on my own. And like you mentioned, the work you've done in the realm of energy healing and sound healing and art, and that's all learning how to do Pisces in a conscious way.
Yeah, well, I'd love to ask. This is such a great point that I'm glad you brought up because I feel it. I have Mercury in Pisces, North Node in Pisces, different goddess asteroids in Pisces as well. I have a very strong Pisces signature, and I mean, I'm that person that sometimes like I'm just like, oh, I can't even do the grocery store today because it feels just the idea of going and being around people feels so energetically overwhelming. That I definitely feel that Pisces overwhelm, where just kind of being out in the collective energy sometimes is just so much for me. And I've learned my strategies and techniques that like really help me um, essentially hold my energy field better. And I love that you also spoke about not having to like defend ourselves because anytime I've done more of like, oh, I have to like with almost like in a Martian like force or effort way, like keep other people's energy out, like that kind of like that, like I feel like this like constriction in my energy field, and it almost feels like it invites in like more of the energy that I'm like
Right.
trying to push out. So
Yeah.
it's been this like how to actually be soft and fluid and flowing, but with this nice like energy field that's not so susceptible to like all energies moving in. And I'd love to hear just any practical guidance or strategies that you found have worked to help with like dealing with that overwhelm when we're feeling very, very energetically sensitive.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was getting, okay, so on the one hand, there can be like, oh my God, it's all coming at me and I need to,
Yeah.
so and I feel that too. And where the default can be, I tend to shrink my
Mm,
own energy field to kind of hide from
yeah.
or attempt to hide from the bombardment of what I feel is coming at me. And that's what doesn't work, right? So I feel like there's something, and I think this is really important for what we're coming into and for all of us who are the highly sensitive people and the people who really are aware of multidimensionality and spiritual realities is to actually make our own field bigger around us,
Mm.
like to lean into the expansion versus the shrinking. And as I'm saying this, I'm like, oh, that's so Pisces too. Pisces ruled by Jupiter, the
Yeah,
principle of
I was literally just
expansion,
thinking that
right?
too.
But whereas Virgo is like the little things and the shrinking. Oh, I'm just a little, don't pay any attention to me, right? Shadow Virgo, let's say. So really, I mean, of course, the breath being so important. One of my teachers would say, more breath, more God, right? So, like breathing, like, and this is about our inner God, our inner divinity, and creating more space within myself so I can kind of bigify, I can expand my field and feel really strong in that and create an energetic field that feels like that feels protective. So I'm not it, I feel like it's such a habit of sensitive people, starting with myself, to like we've learned to adapt to the energies coming at us so that we don't feel like the weirdo or so we don't feel so bombarded. And it's been a life practice for me to like, wait, my energy, okay, let me bring that into the space and see what shifts,
Yeah,
right?
I love that you're saying that because something that's just coming up for me is I've had over the years because it's been like such a journey for me being so energetically sensitive where I tend to want to do right like kind of my Virgo South Node in hermit and like I'm gonna hide from the world and just not go out into the world so I don't feel the energies and don't feel overwhelmed. And I've had several different like psychics, intuitives I've gone through who have said, especially like in my 20s when I was really in it, was like your energy field is so contracted. Like they're just like it's so like
Yeah.
pulled in. And so I love that, like being able to expand the energy field out. And it just is making me think of Kaylin, who's one of the, she's one of the co-hosts of the summit. She always talks about, being a superconductor of love. And when within ourselves, our being and our energy field is a superconductor of love, it's like anything that enters or comes into contact of our energy field has to raise to that vibration. And as over the years she's talked to me about that, like it's been so helpful to kind of hold that mantra and that intention in my energy field when I'm going out and about in the world to feel yeah, to feel more confident and not so like and it's also what also was coming up that I've maybe never thought about with the Pisces energy is right, like one of the other like, kind of shadows of Pisces can be like the victim mentality. It can either be that or like the mortar, like one or the other, but they're actually very similar. But I think in my own journey, feeling so sensitive to energy, I can kind of have like a victim mentality around, oh, people are sending me this energy, and like feeling almost at the whim of others' energy and like feeling kind of like victimy about it. And so that was just like I don't really have much of a thought other than like, wow, that's something like a kind of a shadow Pisces thing for me that I think could be really transmuted over this nodal shift of the North Node going into Pisces.
Yeah, that's very relatable. And I also want to name my own victim story around frequencies that are coming in through EMF, through, yeah, I feel like we're bombarded with
Ah,
harsh, not healing, not helpful frequencies. And that's definitely a place where I can go into my victim as well. And there are some very useful remediations that are working on the frequency level. I've really loved biogeometry, and have some remediations around my home. There's orgone energy. I've just started working with Leela, quantum tech, these other devices. So I think this is about being very proactive on the energy level. And again, there's going to be a lot of people who are just like, you're crazy. That has nothing to do with, the frequencies are not making you sick, or, we know it's all about frequency, right? I mean, if we're 99.999 whatever percent space, that's what science is telling us. So if we're not working with space, we're missing the headline, we're missing the main story. And I think this conversation is really important because, as we mentioned when we started talking, with all the collective planets in masculine signs, we can't be hermits anymore. Damn it. Right? This is the masculine sides are, I mean, one way to think about them is externally focused. We've been in a time of super internally focused. I mean, and we can think about Pluto, just, Pluto alone as a big headline, having been in Capricorn since 2008. Capricorn's the hermit. Capricorn's an earth sign. It's inward. So the force of evolution, Pluto was saying, you need to be alone. You need to do some deep inner work. Well, now Pluto's in Aquarius. We have to be extroverts. It
mm.
can be very uncomfortable for the sensitive people. And again, but this isn't about, okay, I have to be more extroverted, so I got to shut down my sensitivity and shrink my energy field, right? The opposite. Okay, one more thing for this slide, which is that these are the recent times when the North Node has been in Pisces. So if you were born during any of these times, welcome to your nodal return. And this next year and a half are going to be really powerful for you to, again, there's like a reset around your sense of purpose and soul's intention. And tends to be a very powerful time. So you know who you are. Okay. There we go. Okay, and this is just as we've been talking about. Here we go. Here are all the collective planets transitioning into masculine signs, air and fire. Pluto's already in Aquarius. Neptune's going to go into Aries in March, Saturn into Aries in May, Uranus into Gemini in July. And again, they will all, except for Pluto, Pluto's solidly in Aquarius for the next 20 years. The other planets will retro back and then come back in for a while, starting in 2026. But this is a big dose of that yang energy, again, calling us out into the world, calling us into our power. I mean, Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries, and they're going to be exactly conjunct in February of 2026, but they're going to get pretty close this year. And Aries is a sign of personal power. These are some very powerful energies. Again, in terms of showing up and being more like, here I am. I'm giving my gifts to the world. Pluto and Aquarius. I'm expressing my uniqueness. I'm taking that risk of being the weirdo and the freak while being sensitive and leading with compassion. Okay. Okay. So, what I think is so interesting here is that, okay, we've got this big influx of masculine energy, but I see Pisces as the ultimate yin. It's Pisces, as we said, water. So water already is a more feminine sign or feminine element. But Pisces is also the last sign of the zodiac. So it's like there's a kind of extreme water. This is like the ultimate being and surrender. And the sign Pisces is where the planet Venus is exalted. So every planet has a certain sign that it just loves to be in. And the old idea is that this is where Venus receives honors. She's the honored guest in the house of Pisces, but also reaches her highest expression. So if Venus is the goddess of love, well, Pisces is about unconditional love. Like, can we, like that level of love, universal love, divine love. I think, is that the agape, I think, in the Christian tradition, right? That level of love. It's not just romantic love or personal love. Big, going big here. This is Jupiter's realm. If Venus is the goddess of pleasure, Pisces is ecstasy, it's bliss, it's nirvana, right? So a whole new level of pleasure. May it be so. If Venus is beauty, Venus also has to do with art and aesthetics. And Pisces, transcendent beauty and art. This isn't just about, doing the makeup right or having a nice hairdo or something. This is beauty that, like when you step into a cathedral in Europe and just like, ah, or see a work of art or hear a piece of music that totally transports you. I mean, I can think of some like live shows I've gone to where I felt like a different person coming out, right? Art can have that transcendent, transformational potential. Also, Venus as the goddess, as the feminine, associated with receptivity. And in Pisces, it's like, wow, how do we take that receptivity to a whole new level? I'm not just receptive to the people around me. Oh, thanks for saying nice things or giving me gifts. Yay, I know how to receive, But it's like, how can we receive the spirit coming through us? How do we surrender to the greater flow of life? And surrender is a tricky place too with Pisces because we don't want to surrender to, the guy next door or what the government's telling me to do, or right. This is surrender. If we surrender to anything other than our highest self or our expression of God or source or the great mystery of life coming through us, that's when we get into trouble. So surrender can be tricky, but surrender to spirit, receptivity to spirit, is part of the higher expression of Pisces. And then just to get a little esoteric here in terms of the goddess and the Piscean association with the goddess. The Vesica Piscis, sometimes called the Vesica Pisces, is an ancient symbol of the goddess. And that's these two circles coming together here. And this space in between the almond, the what's called the mandorla, something like that, getting the word right. This is the vulva of the goddess. This is where new life comes through. So it's bringing together the masculine and feminine and creating something new from that, which is the miracle of life. Um, and this just shows you how the symbol for Pisces was created from the Vesica Piscis, right? So this connection with the goddess. And then I just love that the Christian symbol of the fish comes from the Vesica Pisces or Vesica Piscis. So when we see the Christian symbol, we can say hello to the great portal of life of the goddess. And that's what it actually symbolizes, right? So Pisces as the goddess, and really again opening up to that big divine feminine energy and being conduits for that coming through us. Okay, so let's get into this Virgo Pisces polarity, which there's different ways to think about this axis. One of the ways I like to think about it is that Virgo is the priestess or priest. Virgo is the temple tender, and that's where the order and the purification and getting all the details right comes in. But Pisces is source itself, is that divine energy. And so, yeah, Virgo can get a bad rap for, being like, I gotta have everything super neat and clean and whatever. But there's a bigger purpose there. I mean, if we walked into a temple and there was like crap all over the floor and piles of magazines in the corner or something, it wouldn't feel good, right? We need that clear space so that we can, and clear bodies, right? Virgo is also about purifying the body and having a healthy body so that we can connect with spirit. I don't know about you, but if I eat a bunch of chocolate, a bunch of crap, I don't feel very connected with the divine, like, oh, look. So that has something to do with this axis. And this is also the axis of service, although Virgo and Pisces serve in different ways. Okay, so and here again, it's not about getting rid of Virgo, but it's about leading with Pisces. So Virgo is the specificity, the details. Again, details are important. And while the North Node's in Pisces, we really want to lean into the bigger picture. We want to see the forest and not just the trees. Because with that clear focus on details that Virgo has, it's easy to go into criticism. Virgo is the archetype of the critic. Again, there's a place for criticism, but this is where, with the South Node in Virgo, we can get very stuck in what's wrong with this picture, what's wrong with you, what's wrong with me. Virgo can be very self-critical. And the antidote for that is compassion, right? We're all on a journey. Life is challenging, this human experience. Let's have compassion for ourselves and for each other. We don't need to tear apart all the little details, but just accept. Well, here we go into the next one, perfection and acceptance. So Virgo can have a certain idea of what's perfect. Okay, yeah, well, this room's a mess and you didn't finish this and blah, blah, blah. There's all these reasons why you're not perfect. Oh, I still have this bad habit. I'm not perfect because blah, blah, blah. And going back to the South Node as a drain and where we can get stuck, Virgo can get stuck in that, like, if things aren't going well, it's because I'm not working hard enough to perfect it. And that's a bottomless pit where maybe the situation is just calling for acceptance. Oh, maybe this is perfect from that higher perspective. How would God see this situation? How would the goddess see this situation? From that perspective, it is actually perfect. My limited human vision can only see so much. Virgo is a sign of order. Pisces is chaos. Again, if we think about water, and I associate Pisces with the ocean, it's like the ocean of consciousness where everything, it's the end of the zodiac. All the signs flow into this soup of consciousness that can feel very chaotic. But at another level, Piscean chaos is actually divine order. Again, we can't see it. It looks like a mess to us. And we can think about, in this crazy 2025 year when there's like things are all over the place and it's not looking like I think it should look. I think it's going to be pretty chaotic. And if we expand our perspective, can we imagine that actually maybe there's divine order behind this apparent chaos and trusting that? In terms of how we know what we know, all of the mutable signs are associated with how do we know what we know? That's another big discussion. But with Virgo, it's analysis. Virgo takes all those details and facts and data and then processes it through Virgo's very powerful mind to get to, okay, what's really going on here? But Pisces operates through intuition. And here's where we want, it's not that we want to get rid of analysis or ignore the facts, but we want to lead with our intuition, meaning that something can look really good on paper, right? Virgo likes to make lists. Well, let me list the pros and cons, right? So you list the pros and cons, and actually, well, the pros look pretty good. But then you have this, I don't know, something just feels a little off. That's Pisces. That's your intuition talking to you, that little whisper, and it's subtle. And this is where we need to not be so busy and running around being productive because then we miss that subtle voice. And this is where we can say, like, a month later, like, oh shit, you know what? I had a hunch and I overrode it with my very powerful mind. Damn, right? So we want to pay attention to that whisper of intuition, to our feelings, what our heart is telling us. And just, that can be really subtle, but it's really important. And then we can use the Virgo to go back, okay, well, my intuition is saying there might be something a little off with this. Well, let me go check it. Let me use my Virgo analysis to check that thing that I felt was a little bit off. Okay. Virgo can go into judgment. With Pisces, we want to lead with forgiveness. And this can be, I mean, certainly in our personal lives, this comes up, but also, again, in terms of the world, where we can have so much judgment about what this faction is doing and that entity is doing and this bad person, and that it doesn't help us, as the spiritual teachers say, forgiveness is really for us. Because when we're in that judgmental state, and let's remember the dynamic of projection that we got a lot of lessons in with the South Node in Libra before it moved into Virgo, that we're pointing a finger out there and the rest of the fingers are pointing at us. So to really work with that energy of forgiveness and knowing that that's a way that we free ourselves. Also finding fault versus seeing the gift. Again, Virgo can get very caught in problem energy, where the expansive vision of Pisces is about, like, there are infinite possibilities. I mean, Virgo again is the little things, and this is where we can get too focused in on what's wrong and on the little things, and we miss, like, oh, actually the universe is giving me a lot of gifts. This looks wrong, but no, there's a gift here. So how can we expand our perception to find the gifts? This is a rough one, this overworking rest thing, because again, from a cultural perspective, we are so supported in overworking and in being overly busy. And rest, it's almost like a badge of honor if I only got 5 hours of sleep because I was staying up till 2 in the morning to work on this project. Oh, yay. What a good member of society you are. We're like, I slept for 10 hours. I stayed in bed until 9 o'clock and felt great. Right. So rest is important. And part of why rest is important, and this is Pisces rule, sleep, because rest is when the dream time comes in, and Pisces rules the dream time. And, there are indigenous cultures where the dream time is reality and waking life is the illusion, right? So Pisces really wants us to prioritize our rest and downtime and dream time because there's a lot that happens there, which again is not culturally valued, but that doesn't make it unvaluable. It doesn't make it not valuable. We're doing a lot of quote work on the astral plane, and we can receive very powerful messages through our dreams, healing, so much can happen, but we need to let ourselves rest. You want to say something about that, Jamie?
Yeah, no, I just love that you're speaking to the dreaming. And it always, when I think of Pisces, I always think of like the Asclepian dream temples where you would go into, someone would come with their ailment of whatever it was, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and the dream priestesses would go into the dream temple and receive the message that the person needs for healing in the Asclepian dream temple. And as the North Node goes into Pisces, I think it can be such a great reminder that we can very consciously work with the dream realm, that just as simple as before going to sleep at night, incubating a dream by just either whether you're writing it down, whether you're saying it out loud, or just in your mind about setting an intention for your dream, for something to receive, some wisdom to receive, whatever it is, that we can work with the dreams in a very intentional and conscious way.
Yeah, I think especially with the North Node in Pisces, and again, like in in a world context that seems outrageous and chaotic and weird, like what does the dream time have to say about that? And looking for, I feel like there's something confounding about like mentally confounding about the transits that are coming. So we have to come at it from a different angle. And I feel like the dream time opens up these possibilities of knowing and receiving guidance that it's non-linear and it might not make sense. And it's, I think, very practical. I think it's a very practical way. And in terms of working with dreams, yeah, like asking a question before you go to bed, asking for help with something before you go to bed. And not only writing dreams, I know people can have a really hard time remembering their dreams. Writing them down first thing is great, but also drawing dreams can be very powerful, even if you don't know how to draw. It doesn't matter. This is about the process, because Pisces speaks to us more through images and symbols than through language. It's Pisces rules the ineffable. So, yeah, it's
Yeah,
not
and I've
about
had
finding the right
very
words.
powerful experiences of, whenever it's like looking for a pathway forward. So being very connected to that higher dream, that very Pisces, that higher dream, the vision, the inspiration, but not knowing like in the physical how to move forward with that. Like when I've intentionally asked within like incubated dreams around like, um, for guidance on a pathway forward to bring this through. I've had lots of powerful experiences of receiving direction in the dream that I can actually implement in my physical reality. I used to be part of a dreaming group where I used to
Mm.
live, and we talked about like dreaming forward. It's like connecting with something on the dream realm and then dreaming it forward into your physical life.
Yeah, beautiful. I love the idea of working with other people, that Pluto and Aquarius community dimension, and what a beautiful way to connect with other sensitive souls to be working together on the dream time. And the other thing I want to say here in terms of rest, like, yes, dreaming, and just also thinking about how so many artists, scientists, inventors will tell the story of I was working on this problem, can't fix it. Brr. And then I went for a walk, or then I took a bath, or then I took a nap, right? And then the solution comes in the rest, in the downtime. So let's remember the, productivity or usefulness of rest and downtime, that, and play too. Like I feel like there's something, the Virgo part might judge Pisces as being a little frivolous. Do you know what I mean? Like, what
Yeah.
do you mean you're just going to dance or, play the guitar for an hour? What a waste of time, but seeing, calming the Virgo part by saying, actually, this is very productive because when I forget about the problem, that opens me up to solutions that I couldn't get while I was focused in that Virgo way. And yeah, along those lines, fixing problems versus imagining solutions, getting out of the problem energy into the great imagination. Virgo, facts and data. Pisces is the spiritual truths. I mean, this is part of Jupiter. Also, Jupiter is the planet of truth, capital T, eternal truths, right? So leaning into paying more attention to what is this ultimately about? What's the bigger story going on here? What truth am I expressing through my actions versus being overly concerned about the facts and data? Again, not that they're not important. And finally, control and surrender. Virgo, all the earth signs really
Like
like to be
story of my life.
the story of my life. We like to be in control. And Pisces is, again, it's like there's well, let me say this too, that surrender requires trust. And so one idea, uh, this comes from Lauren Geertsen. She has a great book, workbook around breaking the rules or breaking free from your rule book. And she talks about how the opposite of control is self-trust, right? Like it requires trust to surrender. And I think, the most important thing is to surrender to our inner truth, to surrender to like, this is what's true for me. This is what's in alignment. This is what my soul is calling for. And yeah, other people, it's not going to make sense. It's going to look crazy to other people, but I got to surrender to my life flow and where that's calling me versus trying to control it. And Saturn and Virgo is going to try to control it. And we can keep returning to trust, trust, trust.
I love
Okay.
that.
So I think I'm not going to talk about the ingress chart because yeah, can keep it moving forward, keep it flowing here. But I do want to talk about the North Node interacting with, conjoining with both Saturn and Neptune. So we have something really interesting going on here with Saturn and Neptune, two of the slow moving planets. Of course, Neptune moves much more slowly, has a 165-year cycle. Saturn has a 29-year cycle. And Saturn and Neptune have both been in Pisces, and they're both getting ready to move into Aries, as we mentioned, and they will be exactly conjunct in February 2026. But this year they're going to be traveling close together, and I'm sure other people will be talking about that, so you'll have context. But I find it so fascinating that before this big conjunction, and I'll just give my shorthand interpretation of Saturn and Neptune coming together in Aries, and it'll actually be the very first degree of Aries, which is the first degree of the whole zodiac. So that first degree of the zodiac is a powerful initiatory point. It points to something brand new. What's new? Well, Neptune is our dream. It's our vision. Dream for the future. Saturn, let's make it real. Let's bring it into form. Let's commit to it. Let's be dedicated. Let's ground it into reality. So I feel like there's this new dream that's coming in, which we're going to get a glimpse of this year, but it's, I think, 2026 when it really is ready to land. So before that happens, both Neptune and Saturn cross the North Node. And this happens, Neptune will be exactly conjunct the North Node on February 7th, but it's in effect for a long time, like within 5 degrees. So they're traveling pretty close together since mid-December until the end of April. There's a really beautiful Venus plus Neptune in the North Node just before Neptune's exact conjunction. We can really lean into that divine feminine energy. And then Saturn conjuncts the North Node. That's exact in April, but again, in effect for a longer period. So some ways that I'm thinking about this hello to the North Node, the North Node, it can bring out the best in a planet. When it touches another planet, it really wants to bring out the highest expression. So there's something about the North Node reminding these planets of their, most beautiful, exalted, high-minded, visionary expression as a preparation for this big Aries conjunction. And I think also, Saturn is the principle of necessity. So I put this together in a little sentence here. The necessity, Saturn, of harnessing the power of our imagination, Neptune, in order to move into our highest evolutionary future, the North Node. And also really embracing, I don't know if I said this exactly how I wanted to. I wanted to say something about really like taking responsibility for that level of consciousness and coming into integrity with our soul self, our deep self, and spiritual authority, and that Saturnian quality of dedication and commitment. We could say discipline also. This is not easy, right? It's not easy to commit to, well, this is my big dream and I'm going to make it happen. Or even this is where my soul is calling me. Again, you think I'm weird. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, but I know it and I'm committing to it, right? This is not easy. And Saturn is a planet of fear and mastery. Like this is really calling us to master this Piscean quality of how we work with consciousness, how we work with our sensitivity, because we're going to need that moving forward. And I want to say too that how we do Pisces determines how we do Aries. And what I mean by that is that the zodiac is a cycle. It's an evolutionary cycle or developmental cycle. It's not like Pisces is this discrete entity, and then we go over here to Aries, another discrete entity, right? So Pisces is about how we close out a cycle, how we do endings, which I think, again, culturally, not so great, in terms of how we grieve, how we honor the past. I mean, especially American culture, gets a D or an F on that level. Like we're all about youth and the future. But Pisces is about honoring where we've been and learning from the past and gaining wisdom from the past and grieving what we're letting go of as we enter this new cycle. And ideally, with Pisces, where there's a purification, there's a washing clean. That's the point of grief, is to release old energies that we don't want to bring with us into this new cycle. And even, I think it's James Hillman who talks about, is it James Hillman? Might be Martine Prechtel, it might be both of them, but talking about the relationship between grief, Pisces, and war, Aries. And the reason why we have such a violent culture is that we don't know how to grieve. And we've lost the art of grieving. So there's something about, getting very conscious, really paying attention to how we're doing Pisces and knowing that this is part of our preparation for this massive rebirth of Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Okay. So now I always like to look at whatever astrological event I'm looking at. I always like to look at people who were born with that same placement as like, who are the people who really get it and who use this energy in a really great way. I thought it was so interesting. There are so many spiritual teachers, prophets, spiritual figures who were born with the North Node in Pisces. And Krishnamurti and Buckminster Fuller, they were both born with the North Node in Pisces and Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter, the ruler of Pisces, which is going to move into Cancer in June of this year. And Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. This is a very powerful placement for Jupiter. So I think it's beautiful that Jupiter is going to be in Cancer while the North Node, for about a year, that the North Node is in Pisces. So with Pisces, this is the yin or internal expression of Jupiter. So this is all about the inner world. And this is why I like traditional rulers, because each planet rules an inner expression and an outer expression. So the outer expression of Jupiter is Sagittarius, which is the globetrotter, the adventurer. I'm going to jet off to this country. I'm going to seek truth by going to this ashram. And, it's very externally focused. But Pisces is like, I don't need to go anywhere. I've got the whole universe inside me. So this is also a time to really lean into the inner journey. And Jupiter is a planet that's about freedom. Pisces and Sag are about freedom, but Pisces is that inner freedom. And we know that there are people who are stuck in prison for a lifetime and they are more free. They've found inner enlightenment they're more free than, the millionaire who's living it up in the physical realm, who feels totally besieged and tied down and right. So freedom's an inside job. Okay, so here's Krishnamurti saying, I don't mind what happens. That is the essence of inner freedom. It is a timeless spiritual truth. Release attachment to outcomes deep inside yourself. You'll feel good no matter what. Again, remember, Pisces is about bliss, right? I mean, that's the high expression of Pisces. And as Krishnamurti says, we can be blissful no matter what, bring it, world craziness. I've got the whole universe in here and I'm connected with my sense of peace and freedom. And then I like Buckminster Fuller's, what he has to say here. It's not for me to change you. The question is, how can I be of service to you without diminishing your degrees of freedom? So this is also about, like, yeah, this is all about our inner work, spiritual work. And part of that work is respecting where other people are at on their journey and not getting into the Virgo, I'm right, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm judging you because you're not doing your work. You're not as advanced as I think you should be, blah, 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 right? There's that quality of acceptance and allowance. And I'm here to be of service. I'm here to serve your freedom, not to dictate what I think it should look like. Yeah. Okay. Now, creativity, so important. And again, I was blown away. This is like a very short list of notable creators born with a North Node in Pisces. This could be a super long list. There are so many phenomenal artists, dancers, musicians, born with a North Node in Pisces. So, and I want to say that this is creativity. This is different from Leo creativity. Okay, Leo is also a very creative sign. But Leo is about, like, I'm so filled with my sense of who I am and what I have to share, and I'm going to shine my light and, put my vision out there. I mean, don't get me wrong, Leo's beautiful. I love Leo, but Piscean creativity is, I am a channel for something bigger coming through me. It's actually not about me at all, right? It's about making myself, again, receptive to something bigger that's flowing through me. So I love Isadora Duncan, brilliant North Node in Pisces. I'm seeking the dance, which might be the divine expression of the human spirit through the medium of the body's movement, right? It's not, I'm a brilliant dancer, look at me, it's like I'm surrendering to something coming through me. And I also love, Elizabeth Gilbert. She wrote one of my favorite books on creativity called Big Magic. And I highly recommend this if you're feeling, if you're wanting to be creative but feeling stuck, go to Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And she has so many Piscean stories in there around, like, creativity works in a magical way, right? So she says creativity itself doesn't care at all about results. The only thing it craves is the process, right? That's the water element. Learn to love the process and let whatever happens next happen, right? And she talks about how ideas, like, it's not her idea, but she talks about how ideas travel around until they find the right place to land. Like, she has this whole story about an idea for a book that first came to her, and she kind of worked with it and then didn't really have time for it, didn't want to do whatever. And then that idea went to oh, I'm spacing on her name, one of my favorite novelists. Anyway, Anne Patchett. Anne Patchett ended up writing a novel that Elizabeth Gilbert had the idea for, and very specific and weird. And it's like, yeah, if you're not available to the idea, it's going to go to someone else, right? That's the realm of Pisces. Like, I didn't do it. It is about us. It's about us showing up and doing the Virgo, like making time for it, doing our due diligence. Okay, I'm going to sit here at my keyboard, ready to write, and in a good space, and then let what comes through come through. So, and again, like, paying more attention to process, trusting the process of what's coming through us. And that's why dance and music, are such, and poetry, like, such great Piscean expressions. So definitely something to lean into. And part of the reason to lean into the creative process is this is the practice ground for our imagination, for, like, what we create. If I create a painting, well, cool. But what I really want to create is a beautiful new world, right? But that painting is a practice ground because I'm going to have to take risks. Oh, I'm going to make mistakes. It's not going to look perfect. I'll have to deal with, brings up a lot. I used to do a lot of process painting, which is all about what's happening internally while I'm doing the painting. It had nothing to do with the outcome, and that's Pisces. Okay, so this is about really engaging the imagination to create new realities. And coming back to Buckminster Fuller, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete, right? And again, Virgo, Saturn and Virgo can get stuck in what's wrong, what's not working. Why bother? Just create the new thing, right? We don't need to criticize. We know what's wrong. That's easy. Use the imagination. And then here's Dane Rudhyar. Man can only become what he is able to consciously imagine or image forth. Or I like the astrologer Caroline Casey, who says, imagination lays the tracks for the reality train, right? We have to, so this isn't about like, well, I'm just going to sit around daydreaming all day and not actually do anything. But this is about what comes first, right? And if we're busy doing, then we might just be creating the same old problems over and over because we haven't imagined something new. So we need to start with the imagination. Okay, I think this is my final slide here. Finally, we need to have a sense of humor. And, I think Pisces is really good at laughing at the absurdity of life, right? Virgo can get very serious. Oh my God, it's a mess. Look at all this work we have to do. It's serious. There's a problem, right? Where Pisces, zooming back into the big picture, like humans are hilarious. The world is, it's so, and again, I was really struck by how many amazing comedians were born with a North Node in Pisces. And I think it's cool because the South Node in Virgo, that's the gift of timing, so important in comedy, precision, being good with language, right? Virgo is ruled by Mercury, um, language, the mind. But then there's that Piscean element of like taking us into new territories and expanding our mind and seeing things totally differently, zooming out. So Bill Murray, I just love him. Life is a game, and it's much more fun if you play it as your own game. So stay light and loose and relaxed. Great North Node and Pisces advice. And Joan Rivers, life goes by fast. Enjoy it. Calm down. It's all funny. And I think a sense of humor is going to take us very far over this next year. Staying light and playful, and isn't aren't humans just so entertaining? Isn't this world like hilarious? Can you even believe it? So that's what I've got to say here to
Oh, I
share.
love this, Emily. I'm feeling so inspired, particularly around art and creativity. I'm just wanting to go and like create art of some type. Even though I'm one of those people who are like, oh, I'm not an artist. I'm not good at painting or drawing. And I'm just feeling inspired to create anything just to be in that vibration of creation, like you said, not
Right.
for the results of it. So I love that. And I'd love to ask you just so if someone has their North Node in Pisces or South Node in Virgo, they're getting their nodal return. And if someone has their North Node in Virgo, South Node in Pisces, they're getting their nodal reversal. Do you have any guidance or anything to share for anyone who's having their nodal return or nodal reversal over this time?
Well, I tend to think, and it's been my experience, that the nodal return is easier in a sense because it's like this big spotlight on where I'm headed and what I can embrace. I mean, yes, at the same time, it is also a spotlight on what we're releasing. So both ends of the polarity can get louder, but it also feels, at least again, in my experience and just, coming out of my own nodal return, feeling like that, like fired up about where I'm headed and what I'm creating and feeling more empowered to really live my purpose. I think the nodal reversal is a little trickier. Okay, so if someone was born with a South Node in Pisces, that the North Node is now on, and the North Node in Virgo that the South Node is now on, I think the nodal reversal is a time when we're really working deeply with the shadows of both ends of the polarity. And so this is where, as I said in the beginning, the North Node is this place of increase or strengthening. So imagine if the North Node in the sky is on the South Node in your chart, what's increasing? What's strengthening? Oh, those old patterns.
Mm.
So this is where, there's a lot of working with the shadow. And of course, ultimately, this is in service. I don't see any influence, as bad or whatever. Like this is ultimately in service to our evolution. And it's a time of doing really deep work around the more shadowy expressions of both ends of the polarity. So there can be a lot of awareness and release and, oh wow, that's really not working. It's an evolutionary push toward our North Node, but in a more, backwardsy kind of way.
I love that there's like a gnat that literally like flew in front of me
Oh.
right as you were sharing that. Thank you. And you've offered us so much like practical guidance on how to really embrace this beautiful energetic shift, but any like last thoughts on, yeah, just practical embodied things we can do to navigate this energy and really embrace the beautiful qualities of this Pisces North Node.
Yeah, earlier you had briefly mentioned sound healing as something that you had explored it, which is very Piscean because Pisces is associated with the sense of hearing and with vibration. And sound is so powerful. And I think something that's very simple and that I've found very powerful is to hum our own there's a lot of power in our own voice. So of course, like, yes, sound healing, like going to the singing bowls, and there's different healing frequencies you can listen to online or whatever, cool. But we have that power within ourselves. And so sometimes I'll just, if I'm lying down, if I'm feeling like wow, I need to come back to myself, then just humming.
Mm.
And then if there's some part of my body that feels tight or in pain, sending that hum to that body part. And it's powerful. And it's a way, so it's kind of like a Virgo Pisces integration practice. And I also like it because it's very simple and anyone like a kid can do this. And I think kids probably do it very naturally because it's comforting to the system and you can do it anywhere at any time and just do it for a couple minutes. I mean, there's a recommendation to, hum for like 10 minutes is like super powerful. But that could be a very simple meditation and self-healing practice. Um, I also think working with the subconscious, again, we're in Pisces land, the North Node in Pisces wants us to remind us that we have everything within ourselves. We have everything. We are expressions of the divine. We're so powerful. And this is why the world wants to keep our attention out there. And it's all about what power can you give me, or what power can money give me, or this job, or whatever. It distracts us from our how powerful we are internally. So working with the subconscious mind. So we talked about dreams, but also it's very powerful before you go to sleep to program or reprogram your subconscious mind. And the they whoever they are, the experts say that the subconscious mind is like a gazillion times more powerful than the conscious mind. So I could be going around saying, I am abundant and wealthy with my conscious mind. That's not gonna, like, if my subconscious mind is saying I'm impoverished and suffering and whatever, like, no, the conscious mind, it's nowhere near as powerful as what's going on at that more subtle level inside us. So one way that we can work with the subconscious mind is by planting these messages before we go to sleep when we are in the most suggestive state. Also, when we first wake up in the morning and that kind of twilight time where we can use our conscious mind to connect with and give a different message to the subconscious mind. So I've been working with this healing message, the goes something like this: the infinite intelligence and power of my subconscious mind is now restoring my body's original divine blueprint of perfect health. Right. So, something that we didn't talk so much about, but I think it's important to bring in is that Virgo-Pisces is the axis of health and healing. But Virgo's all about the physical. Virgo's about, what am I eating? What are my exercise routines? What supplements am I taking? Right? That end of health. Again, that's important, right? But I think the Pisces is even more important because Pisces is the consciousness. And so if like, and we see examples of this. We see people who are like, well, I drank my whiskey and smoked my cigarettes every day and lived to be 120, and that has to do with the state of their consciousness. They weren't smoking saying, I'm giving myself cancer, I'm giving myself cancer. They're like, oh, this feels great. I love my cigarette. Yeah. So, and this is a good hack too. If you are doing something that you're seeing as a bad habit, and this is something a naturopath taught me many years ago. She said, if you're drinking coffee or eating chocolate, that's your medicine in the moment. And so you can tell yourself as you're eating it, instead of, this is bad for me, I'm killing myself, this is my medicine. This morning coffee is my medicine. So really, leveraging that power of consciousness that we have and leading with that and making it important, making it a priority is, yeah, my big recommendation.
Oh, I love this and I love you. And I love that what you shared about like that reprogramming your subconscious as you were sharing that. I was like, oh, like getting chills over my body. So I'm gonna come back after this and listen to it again and write it down because I love that. Emily, it's such a blessing to have you here and receive all your beautiful wisdom. You embodied this beautiful Pisces, Virgo nodal axis shift that we're going into so beautifully. Do you have any offerings, projects, anything that you want to share about to let people know how they can connect with you and receive any of your offerings?
Thank you. Well, the big thing is that I started offering an online mentorship for people who want to be professional astrologers. And it's a small group. I only take 12 people. There's an application process. And the group that I did for 2024 just finished, and it was amazing. Had really 12 amazing humans. And I'm going to start the next one, I think, in May. And so if you already have a foundation in astrology and want to be a professional astrologer, this is a way to, it's a mentorship. And I think this is uh, part of what's missing in astrology education, because there's a lot of recordings out there, there's a lot of online classes, but to have another human and that human to human connection to support you, that's what this program is about. And also, it's about supporting people in their expression of astrology. I'm not dogmatic about what works for me, but I'm very much about encouraging people to find what works for them, what resonates for them, what's your unique expression as an astrologer. So that's what the program is about too. So there's that. Otherwise, I do offer periodic classes on current cosmic influences. And as it says in my bio, I do a new moon and full moon transmission every month. And those are geared toward people who may or may not know anything about astrology. So those are very accessible to all levels. And I do personal readings too.
Oh, beautiful, Emily. I highly recommend connecting in with Emily and her work. And even with those transmissions, the new moon, full moons, even if you're well studied in astrology, you will get a lot from tuning in. I always do. So it's such a blessing to have you here. And yeah, any last words to share with people before we sign off?
Well, I'll just say thank you. And it's been just phenomenal to get to talk with a living, beautiful expression of the North Node in Pisces. I appreciate all the experience and wisdom that you shared and just loved our conversation. And I think we did a good job um, flowing beyond the Virgo time boundaries and just, flowing in Pisces land.
Totally. It actually made me think as you were sharing. I don't want to get off on a whole nother topic now, but it like makes me think of like the Pisces when if anyone I've had a lot of experience being like in the ocean throughout my life and it's like you're kind of wading in one area of the ocean and then all of a sudden you look around and you're like, whoa, I am like the ocean's carried me off way far off from like where I thought I was on the beach. And so that's kind of like the Pisces energy, but if we trust where it's taking us, it's usually taking us somewhere much more beautiful.
Yeah, I loved the flow. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. And bye everyone. And we'll see you for all the other talks. All right.